my name is LEONY Coppens. I'm a clinical psychologist and I'm going to talk to you about trauma and resilience in children. And I'm going to use a PowerPoint. Let me see. Yes, here it is. The title of this presentation is We Can All Make a Difference, Trauma and Resilience in Children. And the title is also the title of my newest book, but that's in Dutch. But translated, it's called We Can All Make a Difference. What I'm going to talk about is what is trauma, what is resilience, what traumatic experience of events can children have experienced, what can the consequences be, how can we strengthen the resilience of children, and how can everybody make a difference. Trauma is a sort of a difficult concept because everybody uses the word in a different way. You can talk about trauma as something that you're going through at the moment, but you can also talk about trauma when something is behind you, but you're still suffering from it. We talk about psychotrauma, psychological trauma or psychotrauma, when there's a strong sense of insecurity, a strong threat when the event happens and you can still feel it afterwards. And a strong threat means that you are really feeling that your life is at stake. And for children, it can feel different than for adults. Especially when children see or hear or somehow notice that their parents are at risk for violence or of death, that's for them a very strong sense of death, a very strong sense of insecurity because they're still depending on their parents. When there's a traumatic event and also later when you suffer from trauma, you feel overwhelming emotions. And the overwhelming emotions can be like fear, that's the most common emotion that people mention when they talk about trauma or when they survive something very traumatic. But that also can be emotions like guilt or shame. And the third factor is that there's always some kind of physical effects. You might feel that you're trembling, or you might feel that your heartbeat is going much faster, or you feel like you can't breathe anymore. So it's overwhelming emotions together with overwhelming physical effects. What's important to know is that not every shocking event is also traumatic. It depends on different factors, and there are certain factors that can increase the risk of trauma, of developing trauma complaints after an event. The first one is a young age or young developmental age. And opposite to what a lot of people have thought for a long time, most people have thought for a long time, and a lot of people still think, is that young children are more at risk of developing trauma complaints or trauma after a shocking event. And a lot of people still think that when you're young, you're too young to notice what's going on, to understand what's going on, and to remember it. So that's why a lot of people think that young children are not at risk for trauma. But the opposite is true. When you're younger, you're also more your chance of having experiencing severe shocking behaviors is bigger. For example, the chance of, especially the chance of experiencing child abuse is bigger. The biggest chance of being a victim of child abuse is between 0 and 3 years old. So opposite to what we think about children experiencing trauma and experiencing child abuse, is a lot of times we think that children are older when they experience child abuse. But between 0 and 3 years old, you have the most chance, children have the most chance to be victim of child abuse. So it's also about the developmental age when people are older, and when we talk about adults and they have a developmental delay because of a learning disability, then they also have a bigger chance of experiencing shocking events, like abuse, or especially also sexual abuse, but also neglect or physical or emotional abuse. And they also, like young children, have more difficulty in processing what they have gone through in a good way. So they end up having trauma complaints. And processing also has to do with what you can understand of what happened, and that you're able to see that something was just at that time, and that you feel safe again afterwards. But for young children and for children and adults with a learning disability, it's difficult to understand what's going on, and also, and that's maybe most important, to organize support. And social support, as we'll see further on, is one of the buffers for trauma. So when you're young and you can't talk about what you've been through, what happened to you, and also when you are older but you have a learning disability, and you have no way of talking about what you went through and explaining what happened, then it's really difficult to find support. And maybe you'll have a certain behavior that's different from the way you behaved before, or the way the child behaved before. But when nobody knows what happened to you and you can't explain it, then it's really difficult for other people to understand that it might be a sign of trauma. So that's the first factor. The second one is a history of stressful and traumatic events. When you go through more traumatic or stressful events, your resilience gets less. So that's why when you have a history of stressful and traumatic experiences, you have more chance of developing trauma complaints after the next shocking event. The third one is experiencing interpersonal violence. There's a difference when, for example, you are a victim or you are an observer of a car accident with some physical damage as a result, or damage is not the right word, but physical, you're hurt in a certain way, or you are a victim or an observer of abuse or violence between two people. And the second situation, you are more prone to develop trauma complaints after the situation, either as a victim or as an observer. And that's because we are evolutionary, we are designed to trust other people. And when we lose trust in other people, that's something basic that we need to live, to our trust in other people. So that's a big risk of developing trauma complaints. Then the last two factors, you can also turn them around. An imminent loss or betrayal of an attachment person or figure, or lack of social support. If you turn them around and there is an attachment figure that can help you to reduce the stress and to feel safer again, or there is social support, then these two factors buffer the risk of trauma. They buffer, they make you less prone to develop trauma complaints, so they heighten your resilience level. So how do you say, when there's an attachment figure and there's social support, those are very important factors for children to help them reduce the stress and feel safe again after a shocking event. And that helps them to lower the risk of trauma complaints afterwards. Okay, what are things that can happen to children? That's very different. As you can see on this slide, like physical or emotional abuse, sexual abuse, and also online sexual abuse, physical and emotional neglect, alcohol or drugs abuse in the family, parents in prison, physical or mental diseases of parent, domestic violence, divorce or contested divorce, growing up in poverty, bullying, violence and organized crime, well, and all different out-of-home placements, of course, but also growing up with racism and discrimination, like growing up in poverty, are stressors, so that they it's that's what we'll see in the next slide, but it's often not just one thing that a child experiences. It's often a lot of things together. So the sum of all these things lead to trauma. Also, about when like physical abuse and neglect are a combination a lot of times, or emotional abuse and emotional neglect are a combination a lot of times. It's not just one thing that leads to trauma. So that's what you can see here. Armoede on the left, that's poverty, violence, discrimination, all that kind of stressors are also leading up to trauma complaints. So when you you live in a family where there's a lot of stress because there's financial problems, and they also there's domestic abuse, or there's abuse, violence in the street, or you're dealing with racism or discrimination, all those things together, they lead to more trauma complaints. So what are possible reactions of children in different age groups after experiencing something traumatic? With young children, it's a lot of times it's more basic things that you see, like they cry more, they have potty training problems, they have physical problems with no medical cause, eating problems. In their behavior, you see changes. They might have tantrums, they might hit other children. You see that they are startled at some moments. But they are also afraid of things that they weren't afraid of before. They don't want to be left alone anymore. They maybe sometimes they had certain skills, and they don't have them anymore after the traumatic event. And when children are a little bit older, so let's say 4+, you see the same things as you see in children that are younger, like a fear of being left alone and more crying, but also more trauma-related fears. So a fear of violence, if you're traumatized because of violence. But also you can see more difficult behavior, not specific behavior like in younger children hitting other people or other children, but also other more transgressive behavior. Or children tend to be more quiet and more withdrawn. They lose certain skills also. They start bedwetting again, for example. They start a concern for others. If there's domestic violence in the family, maybe they're really concerned about their mother because their father is very violent against their mother or their stepfather. And they start to try to stay home as much as possible because they are afraid that the mother is being hit by the father. They can have unjustified feelings of guilt. Children have that a lot. They feel guilty, although they are not. There's nothing to feel guilty about, but they can't explain what's going on in another way, that they are the cause of the awful things that happen. And in children 12+, you can see different things like feelings of depression, a lot of shame, feelings of shame and vulnerability, shame on parental dependency. They withdraw from social context. They don't have things that they like anymore. They start using risky behavior, also maybe sexual risky behavior. They use alcohol, can start using alcohol, drugs to make the feelings less overwhelming. Maybe they have destructive and aggressive fantasies, and they get really are afraid because of their fantasies, that they can't control their fantasies. maybe suicidal thoughts, or dissociation and derealization, loss of interest in school, in hobbies, in play, others problems in school, and difficulty in concentrating. What is really important and what is a big message of me is that trauma reactions are normal reactions to abnormal or extraordinary events. So for children, it's really important that they know that the behavior that they show is not because they are crazy, but it's because they went through something that was really upsetting. So I always explain to children that their brain is doing exactly what it should do, and that's why their behavior is like this, because they have a fight or flight or a freeze reaction, or because they are so alert and they are alert for danger and alert for violence. So they react very extremely, and that's a normal reaction to the extraordinary events. So what is resilience? Resilience is not, like a lot of people think, a character trait or a personal trait. It's more or less an aptitude. It's always related to stressful events. So you can't say that someone is resilient when there's no stressors. It's about adapting and bouncing back in a positive way, and that can be in different ways. I'll show you that later. You can even grow because of resilience after stressful events. And resilience is about tapping into personal and environmental resources in the best possible way. And so the resources in the environment, if they fit the personal resources, then the resilience is the chance of growing resilience is bigger. And in the interviews I did for my book, I interviewed 12 adults who had been living with child abuse, sexual abuse, war, neglect, physical and emotional abuse, and all different stressors beside these things. And a lot of them said there was some kind of tipping point when they felt like, I can't go any lower, and I really have to change my behavior now. I really have to make different choices, and that's I describe it as a tipping point. And resilience can look different. Let's see this small tree that's in a big storm, and in the end it grows up to a tree that is a regular tree. You can't see that this tree went through this big storm. But it can also look different. It can also look like this. Yeah, so how resilience looks like, or how it influence development is different. And you can be a unique tree because of what you went through. And it's nothing less or nothing more or less important or less beautiful. It's just different because of what you went through. So this visual is based on a research of Maston in 2015, and she shows us different ways that resilience can develop. If you see in the timeline that at X, at that point in time, there's something really a stressful event or an impactful event. And what you see is the first line is A, is that the person who develops, who experiences the X, the stressful event, it doesn't show on the way the person is functioning. It's within the green lines, and that means that it's a normal development, normal functioning, healthy functioning. So if we look at B, then we see that there's a difference. You see that there's a drop in functioning at the X, at the point of where something a stressful event happens. The functioning, the way of functioning drops below the green, but then during time it gets back to the way it functioned before. And then if we look at C, this is a group of children that was in big research, an American research, after they were living in orphanages in Romania, and with the fall of Ceausescu, they were adopted, a lot of them, by American families. And what you see is that they lived in very neglectful circumstances, and their resilience functioning was below the green part. So yeah, that was because of the huge neglect they experienced. And then after the adoption and after that they were taken from the orphanage, you see that they have a big rise in the way of resilient functioning. So that's C. And then the last one, D, is that you are somewhere in the green part, but then after experiencing something really stressful, you you grow your resilience because of that, and then your resilient functioning is even bigger. Or I say resilient functioning, it's more adaptive functioning. It's because of resilience is adapting and bouncing back, as I said before. So there are 4 pillars through which resilience is strengthened. And the first one is social support. I'm going to talk some more about this. And then a sense of control and beliefs in one's own abilities, self-regulation and coping skills, and sources of faith, cultural tradition, hope, and meaning. So the first one is social support. That's the biggest one by far. And the first point you see here is that relationships with supportive parents, that's the best basis, how do you say, that's the best way to develop resilience. If children are grow up in a family where the parents are sensitive enough and they tap into all the personal resources, then they have a big chance of growing, getting very resilient, developing a lot of resilience. The second point is belonging, a feeling of belonging. Everybody, it's a basic feeling, an evolutionary feeling, or not a feeling, but an evolutionary need to belong to a group, to others. We as humans need to feel that we're part of a group, because that's the way we're designed to function in a group. So a feeling of belonging is very important. And the third one has to do with it, of course, when children get older, they have more the part that relationships with friends, friendships, that part is getting bigger. It's more important for them to have good friends that they can rely on and that they can learn from and that they can trust. And then the fourth is acknowledgement for what has happened to you. And people, children, but also adults, need to learn from others. Was not your fault, and something really bad has happened to you, but it was not your fault. And that you went through that doesn't say anything about you, only that you're a strong person to have lived through it. So let's do a small exercise. I hope this works online. Think back of a time when you felt supported as a child. And if it's difficult to think back of a time when you were supported as a child, you can also think back of an experience that you were supported by another adult, as an adult yourself. So think about what this person did. What did the person do to support you? And then also think about a time that you supported a child. And what did you do? And how did you notice that the child felt supported? And then when you have thought about these both things, try to look for the similarities between the different experiences. So what you try to find out is, what does social support looks like? Is it big? Does it take a lot of time and energy and money? Or is it about small things like feeling seen, feeling heard, feeling get the feeling that someone notices you, and that someone listens to you without any judgment. And maybe sometimes it's also about practical support, but a lot of times it's those things: feeling heard, feeling seen, feeling how do you say, validated, and have the feeling that someone is there, someone sees you as an important person and takes the time to support you. So it's important to realize that this important factor of social support is not something big or something that only professionals can do. Everybody can support other children and other adults also, but we talk about children now. So you're always in a position to support someone. Children know that you can't, if there are big problems and big issues, children know that you can't, as a neighbor or as an aunt or as a soccer trainer, you can't solve, or as a teacher, you can't solve the problems. But it makes a huge difference for them if they feel that you take them seriously, that you listen to them without judgment, that you try to help them if necessary. But just being seen and being heard is so important. Then the second pillar is a sense of control and beliefs in one's own abilities. And a sense of control helps to reduce stress. You can understand that when something traumatic happens, you lose any control, feeling of control. It just takes, there's nothing you can do to control the situation. That's what how an experience, a traumatic experience, is like. You don't have any control. So that's something. Afterwards, you try to have a sense of control, because when you don't feel the control, you feel like you were in the situation again. So children will always look for a way to feel in control. And sometimes, like in a classroom, it's not the way you want to have the behavior you want to see from the child. So if you, as a teacher, for example, but also in different roles, if you try to give the child a sense of control just by giving it a choice. Do you want to do it this way or this way? Do you want to do this first, or do you want to do that first? Or do you want me to help you first, or do you want me to come later, or do you come yourself? Whatever way you can give a feeling of control reduces the stress. And the second thing is the confidence in yourself and your own abilities. So we are always in a place where we can help other children, help children and juveniles to feel more confident about themselves and to feel more confident about their own abilities. Yeah, we can, but for example, when you support them and you don't judge them and you try to talk about, ask them how they want to solve a situation, and then you can help them to feel confident about you, about themselves. Another thing is about developing talents and interests. And talents is not only about big things that you're going to be the best soccer player in the world, but it's by developing things that you feel joyful with, and that you can develop yourself and that you can feel that you can learn new things, which is very important for resilience. And the fourth pillar of this sense of control and belief in one's own abilities is exercise, sport, and creative expression. If I think back of the children, or the adults that I interviewed for my book, a lot of them said, like, writing lyrics for rap music, for example, was helping me to feel better and to feel stronger, but also because those lyrics were used by others. Other person would say that they felt very supported by the lyrics. That would do something also about the confidence in the person themselves. So exercise, sport. One other person I interviewed, he got the chance from a physical therapist to start to play soccer, and soccer just changed the way his life went. Because soccer was so important for him. He learned all the things he couldn't learn at home, he learned in playing soccer and becoming a trainer for a soccer team. And then um, he found out that he could work really well with children. Then he decided to be a teacher. The third pillar is self-regulation and coping skills. As you can see on this illustration, it's about being calm and supportive when a child is overwhelmed. Then you can be a co-regulator. And when children are really young, like let's say 3 or 4, they just go to school and somebody messes with the thing that they are building. They have a fit, they throw a fit. We know that children are not able to regulate themselves, and we help them by talking calm to them and maybe touching them and saying supportive things. We help them to calm down and to feel in control again, and then they can go and play further. But when children are traumatized, they when they are older, they still have the same problems with self-control. So also when children are older, traumatized children, they need our help to co-regulate. And what's helpful is that children learn to deal with difficult situations in the most possible ways. Because if for example, they see someone dealing with a difficult situation or a stressful situation, they can learn, okay, this is also a way of dealing with this situation. And you as a teacher or a soccer trainer or whatever, as a neighbor or an aunt, you can also try to help the child with examples of, oh, maybe sometimes this for me it works if I listen to music, or for me sometimes it works if I go to my pet and play with my dog or with my cat, because it makes me feel calm again. So you can help with suggestions. And of course, trauma-focused therapy is an important way to help children or juveniles learn self-regulation and coping skills. But the recurring interactions that children have with people in their daily lives, that experience offer the best opportunities to develop new ways of dealing with strong emotions and stress. So that's where you come in, because you are maybe having daily interactions with the child, or maybe not daily but weekly, and the child can learn from you new ways of dealing with strong emotions and stress. So the fourth pillar is sources of faith, cultural traditions, hope, and meaning. And a lot of children and adults also can find support and comfort in religion and culture. And that can be in all different ways. It can be in praying, that's something very concrete, but it can also be the feeling, as some of the people that I interviewed in the book said, the feeling that God always, or Allah, or whoever, always looks over me, or God will give me new chances, or whatever, comforting. But also in religion, certain traditions or rituals can help grow resilience. Another thing is hope by seeing how it can be, and how it this is something that's not right here, but how it can be in a different way. If you grow up in a home situation where there's a lot of violence, and you go to a friend's place and you can see that the parents of the friend are very sensitive to each other and very they act in a loving way to each other, and there's no shouting or no violence, you can see, oh, there's also another way, and it can help you to develop new ways for the future, new ways of interacting. Exchange with peers, offering support to fellow sufferers. That's like what the example I said before. The one of the persons I interviewed for my book, she was I was her therapist for a while, and she went to a closed juvenile, how do you say, a setting where juveniles would live when there were big problems, and she would write lyrics during the wee time, and then find music to go along with the lyrics, and then she would put it on TikTok or on Instagram. And then in the weekend, when she had her phone back, she would see that all these people had reacted on her music, and told her that they felt supported by it. So she really felt supported, felt more confident because she could do something for other people. Acceptance, forgiveness, and gratitude. Some of the persons I interviewed for my book, they told me that after they could forgive their parents for what they've done or not done to them, they felt better. Or after accepting that they couldn't change the past, but they have a future that they can build up in the way they want to do. And gratitude also, gratitude for things that are, for people that are supporting, for example. And this is the example that I use a lot of times. It's not, you won't change a child with one supportive interaction, but every drop of red that you put in the white paint will help to start making a change in the color. So keep on doing these small interactions, and if other people do that also, then eventually the paint will turn pink, like you see in this illustration. So thank you for the difference that you make, and for listening to this webinar. Thank you. Bye bye.